A pinch too much foxglove could stop a heart within minutes. Yet medieval apothecaries prepared medicines using plants so toxic that modern pharmacists would consider them too dangerous to handle. How did these healers create remedies that saved lives instead of ending them, working with ingredients that could kill as easily as cure? Medieval apothecaries walked a razor's edge between healing and harm, crafting medicines from substances that modern science recognizes as containing some of the most potent compounds in nature. Their workshops were filled with herbs that could cure ailments or cause agonizing death, depending on dosage, preparation methods, and the skill of the practitioner. A merchant's infected wound might be saved by a carefully prepared poultice, or a noble's fever broken by a precisely measured tincture, but the same ingredients could easily become instruments of accidental murder if handled by inexperienced hands. The medieval apothecary's workshop was part laboratory, part pharmacy, and part alchemical sanctuary, where the boundaries between medicine and magic seemed to blur in clouds of aromatic smoke and bubbling distillations. These spaces were recognizable by their distinctive smells, the sharp bite of mercury compounds, the sweet fragrance of healing herbs, and the earthy scents of roots and barks that had been gathered from distant lands at great expense and considerable risk. Inside these workshops, hundreds of ceramic jars lined wooden shelves, each one carefully labeled in Latin script, that identified contents whose therapeutic and toxic properties had been catalogued through centuries of careful observation and occasional tragedy. The organization of these materials followed systems that balanced convenience with safety, keeping the most dangerous substances under special security, while ensuring that emergency remedies could be prepared quickly when lives hung in the balance. The most dangerous aspect of medieval pharmacy was the narrow margin between therapeutic and lethal doses that characterized many of the most effective remedies. Plants like digitaeus, belladonna, and hemlock contained compounds that could work miraculous cures when used properly, but would cause certain death if administered incorrectly. Medieval apothecaries had to master these substances without the benefit of modern analytical chemistry, relying instead on empirical knowledge passed down through generations of careful practice. The Guild of Apothecaries maintained control over medicine preparation through regulations that were stricter than those governing any other medieval craft, except perhaps the clergy. The power to heal or kill with a simple mixture created responsibilities that extended far beyond normal commercial transactions. And guild standards addressed not just technical competence, but moral character and professional ethics that would be recognizable to modern medical practitioners. Apprenticeship in the apothecary trade required extensive education that combined practical pharmacy skills with scholarly knowledge of medical theory, herbalism, and even astronomy, since medieval medicine believed that celestial influences affected both disease and treatment effectiveness. Apprentices spent years learning to identify plants and minerals, to recognize signs of contamination or degradation that could make medicines dangerous, and to prepare compounds using techniques that maximized therapeutic benefits while minimizing toxic effects. Master apothecaries guarded their most effective formulations as closely as state secrets, passing knowledge only to apprentices who had demonstrated not just technical competence, but absolute moral reliability. These trade secrets included antidotes for accidental poisonings, preparation methods that enhanced therapeutic properties while reducing toxicity, and diagnostic techniques that could identify conditions requiring specific treatments that might be deadly if used inappropriately. The guild also maintained strict control over access to the most dangerous medicinal substances, particularly those imported from distant lands at enormous expense. Members who violated safety protocols or ethical standards faced penalties that could include permanent exclusion from the profession, but the guild also provided protection against unfair accusations and support for apothecaries whose patients suffered adverse reactions despite proper treatment. The sourcing and preparation of medicinal plants required expertise that combined botanical knowledge with understanding of chemistry that wouldn't be formally developed for centuries. Not every specimen of a medicinal plant contained therapeutic compounds in adequate concentrations, and even good plants could lose their potency or become dangerous if harvested, stored, or prepared incorrectly. The timing of plant collection was critical for maximizing therapeutic properties, while minimizing toxic effects. Many medicinal plants had to be gathered during specific seasons, times of day, or even phases of the moon to ensure optimal potency. The root of mandrake, for example, was believed to be most powerful when harvested at midnight during certain lunar phases, while foxglove required collection during precise stages of the plant's flowering cycle. Processing of raw medicinal materials involved techniques that could dramatically affect both therapeutic and toxic properties of finished preparations. Drying methods had to preserve active compounds while preventing degradation that could make medicines ineffective or dangerous. Grinding and mixing procedures required understanding of how different substances interacted, since some combinations could neutralize beneficial effects, while others might create unexpected toxicity. The most challenging aspect of medieval pharmacy was achieving consistent potency in finished medicines. When working with natural materials that varied significantly in their active compound concentration, a batch of foxglove gathered from one hillside might be twice as potent as plants from another location, requiring adjustment of preparation methods that could mean the difference between cure and catastrophe. The preparation of tinctures and extracts required techniques that concentrated therapeutic compounds while leaving behind substances that contributed to toxicity without providing medical benefits. This separation was achieved through distillation, extraction, and purification methods that pushed medieval chemistry to its limits, using equipment and procedures that remained essentially unchanged until the development of modern analytical techniques. Alcohol-based tinctures allowed apothecaries to extract and preserve active compounds from plants that would lose potency quickly in other preparations. The concentration of these tinctures had to be calculated precisely to provide therapeutic doses without causing alcohol poisoning, especially since many patients receiving these medicines were already weakened by illness. Water-based extracts required different preparation techniques that could extract beneficial compounds without also concentrating toxic substances that might be present in the same plants. These preparations often had shorter shelf lives, but could be safer for patients who couldn't tolerate alcohol-based medicines, or whose conditions made them particularly sensitive to strong preparations. Oil-based preparations allowed for external applications that could deliver therapeutic compounds through the skin, while avoiding the digestive system complications that might result from internal administration. These topical medicines required understanding of skin absorption properties and the potential for toxic compounds to enter the bloodstream through external application. The compounding of complex medicines that combined multiple therapeutic substances required knowledge that approached modern pharmaceutical science in its sophistication. Medieval apothecaries understood that certain combinations could enhance therapeutic effects, while others might create dangerous interactions, and they developed systematic approaches to formulation that maximized benefits while minimizing risks. The calculation of proper dosages for different patients required considering factors that included age, weight, overall health status, and the severity of the condition being treated. Children required different dosages than adults. Pregnant women needed special considerations that protected both mother and child, and elderly patients often couldn't tolerate the same concentrations that would be appropriate for younger, healthier individuals. Quality control in medieval pharmacy involved testing procedures that could detect contamination, degradation, or preparation errors that might make medicines dangerous rather than beneficial. These tests included sensory evaluation techniques that could identify problems through appearance, smell, or taste changes, as well as simple chemical tests that revealed whether preparations contained the expected active compounds. The storage and preservation of finished medicines required understanding of how environmental factors affected stability and potency over time. Light, heat, moisture, and air exposure could all degrade therapeutic compounds or promote the growth of contaminants that would make medicines dangerous to use. Apothecaries developed specialized storage methods that protected their preparations while maintaining convenient access for emergency situations. Labeling systems had to provide clear identification of medicine contents, potency, and appropriate uses, while preventing confusion that could result in dangerous medication errors. These labels often included warnings about toxicity, contraindications for certain patients, and expiration dates that indicated when medicines should be discarded rather than risk using degraded preparations. Record-keeping requirements mandated by guild regulations ensured that apothecaries maintained detailed documentation of their formulations, patient treatments, and any adverse reactions that occurred. These records served multiple purposes: quality control for detecting preparation problems, evidence in legal disputes over treatment outcomes, and educational resources for training new apothecaries in safe practice methods. The economic structure of medieval pharmacy reflected the high value placed on effective medicines and the severe consequences of treatment failures. Successful remedies could command prices equivalent to months of skilled labor, while reputation for safety and effectiveness could make an apothecary wealthy enough to support elaborate workshops and extensive inventories of rare medicinal substances. The social responsibilities carried by medieval apothecaries extended far beyond normal commercial relationships, to encompass duties that were almost priestly in their moral weight. The power to heal or harm through medicine preparation created obligations to serve community needs even when payment might be uncertain, and to maintain professional standards that protected vulnerable patients from exploitation or negligent treatment. Legal frameworks governing apothecary practice included provisions for professional liability that held practitioners responsible for harm caused by negligent preparation or inappropriate treatment recommendations. These laws recognized the special nature of medical practice, while providing recourse for patients who suffered injury from substandard care. The international trade in medicinal substances created networks that spanned continents, bringing exotic plants and minerals from distant lands to European apothecary workshops. This trade required specialized knowledge of how to identify authentic materials, detect substitutions or adulterations that could make medicines ineffective or dangerous, and preserve imported substances during long journeys that might expose them to damaging environmental conditions. Regional variations in medicinal plant availability led to the development of specialized local expertise, while creating demand for imported substances that could treat conditions not responsive to locally available remedies. Apothecaries had to balance the benefits of exotic medicines against their higher costs, and the risks associated with using unfamiliar substances. The seasonal rhythms of apothecary work were driven by plant collection schedules, demand patterns for different types of medicines, and the agricultural cycles that determined when various medicinal materials would be available for harvesting. Peak collection periods required intensive work to gather and process plants, while they retained optimal potency, while winter months were often devoted to preparation and study activities. Weather conditions affected both plant collection and medicine preparation in ways that required constant attention and adjustment of techniques. Humidity levels influenced drying procedures, temperature variations affected distillation processes, and seasonal changes determined optimal timing for collecting different medicinal plants. The tools and equipment used in medieval pharmacy represented some of the most sophisticated instruments available for chemical work, including distillation apparatus, precision scales for measuring minute quantities of potent substances, and specialized containers designed to preserve medicinal preparations while preventing contamination or degradation. The knowledge and techniques developed by medieval apothecaries established principles that influenced pharmaceutical science for centuries. The empirical understanding of drug action, dosage calculation, and quality control that these practitioners achieved through careful observation laid foundations for modern pharmacy that continue to influence contemporary medical practice. The guild system that controlled medieval pharmacy also created professional standards and ethical frameworks that evolved into modern medical ethics and pharmaceutical regulation. The emphasis on patient safety, professional competence, and moral responsibility that characterized the best apothecary practice established precedents for medical professionalism that remain relevant today. Understanding how medieval apothecaries created medicine without poisoning their patients reveals a world where practical necessity drove remarkable innovations in pharmaceutical science and medical ethics. These practitioners developed solutions to complex therapeutic problems using empirical methods, creating treatment systems that served their communities while establishing safety standards that protected vulnerable patients from harm. The precision and responsibility demonstrated by medieval apothecaries represented achievements that showed sophisticated understanding of therapeutic principles and professional ethics. The healers who perfected these techniques created medical practices that saved countless lives while establishing traditions of professional responsibility that continue to influence modern healthcare. The next time you take a prescription medication or visit a pharmacy, remember the medieval apothecaries who first mastered the art of creating healing remedies from potentially deadly natural substances. They worked without modern analytical equipment, without understanding of molecular pharmacology, without even basic knowledge of human physiology, yet they developed pharmaceutical practices so effective and ethical that many of their principles remained valid until scientific medicine replaced empirical practice. Their legacy lives on not just in the medicines they created, but in the fundamental understanding that healing requires knowledge, skill, and absolute commitment to placing patient welfare above all other considerations. If you enjoy the hidden sides of medieval life, hit subscribe and give this video a like.